Hey everybody, Pete A. Turner, executive producer and host of your Break It Down show with our episode featuring Steve Ryan. He's a comedian and, well, frankly, he's hilarious. This is one of our Save the Brave specifically sponsored comedy episodes as we, at Save the Brave and at Bastards Canteen in Temecula, hopefully coming soon, are ramping up to establishing our own performance venue there to have, obviously, charity events to support Save the Brave, but also music, comedy, these kind of things. So whenever we do these, it's Matt Balaker co-hosting, co-producing with me, and so thank you to him. Thank you to Save the Brave for all the work that they do, and here comes Steve Ryan. So anyhow, before we get too much more into Steve Ryan, I just thought I would take a moment and say happy holidays to everybody. Always appreciating, always thankful. If you can, subscribing to the show. If you're listening to this and you're part of Steve's crew, that would be helpful. And then if you're on the YouTube side, on the live side, thank you so much. We're trying to build that live audience, and anything you can do to subscribe and help is always appreciated. We'll be making some more changes, some more upgrades. It's all coming, slowly inching towards the line as things. Well, frankly, things improve around here. We're doing a lot of changes, a lot of updating, and I think you guys are going to enjoy the show as it comes out in the future. There's a big project that I hope we get allowed to do. We'll see. Fingers crossed. Anyhow, just wanted to say that. Won't take much more of your time. It's a fast one. It's Steve Ryan. You're going to love him. Here comes Steve Ryan.
Lions Rock Productions.
This is Jay Moore.
This is Greg Proops.
This is Jordan Harbinger.
This is Dexter from The Offspring.
This is Nathan
This is
East.
Sebastian Younger.
This is Rick Morata.
This is Stuart Copeland.
This is Mick Gillette.
This is Andy Summers.
Hey, this is Skunk Baxter.
This is Gabby Reese.
This is Rob Bell.
Hey, this is John Leon Guerrero.
Hey, and this is Pete A. Turner.
Hey, this is Steve Ryan, and you're watching the Break It Down show.
And now, the Break It Down show with John Leon Guerrero and Pete A. Turner.
Steve is funny. This is one of these episodes where Matt and I get together. Matt Balaker, hey, thanks for coming and co-hosting, where we're doing what I'm calling Save the Brave Presents Comedy, Steve Ryan, and that kind of thing. This is in an effort to ramp up the ability of the Temecula Bastards Canteen, which is about to open pretty soon here, to have a live venue. And so as we get ready to prep for that, we thought, and we're going to raise charitable money through these shows, whether they're music or comedy or whatever. Anyhow, the point is that Matt and I are putting these shows together as we ramp up to the live venue. And we'll still probably do these on the podcast side, but that's sort of the idea here. So when you're watching this, not only are you going to be entertained because Steve's funny and has giant biceps, but also we're doing something for charity, and that's pretty cool. So I'm going to say, hey, Steve, thanks for coming on the show. Matt, tell us about Steve.
Steve is obviously handsome, strong, funny, solid hairline. Interesting story, and someone I look forward to working with at Bastards one of these years. But in the meantime, he's gracious enough to join us now. So thank you very much, Steve.
No, I appreciate it, man. That was a smattering of compliments there.
Well, we're going to end it then.
I'm good. That's all.
Fair enough.
It's better than my father's ever given me. So let's go.
Yeah. Well, thanks for joining us, Steve. Obviously, you're a comic. What made you do this stupid line of work? What's wrong in your head that compelled you to pick up a microphone?
Obviously a lot. I mean, I wish I could be one of those few comics that nothing was wrong. Every now and then, like 1 out of 1,000, you'll meet one of those guys who doesn't have a substance problem, no father issues, no good upbringing, and they're terribly unfunny. It's awful. No, I started when I was about 17. Yeah. So I took many breaks, but I was in like kind of a theater production, and one of the guys was telling us that, hey, he's going to go do stand-up, and he invited everyone to come. And we went and watched, and they had an intermission during the stand-up show, which is something I've never seen since I was 17. And the club owner said, hey, well, during the intermission, each table, if you want to come up and tell a joke, whoever has the funniest joke, we will give you a free round of drinks for that table.
Wow.
And so I got on stage. I was 17. I told some joke that I read out of a Maxim magazine. That lets you know what year that was.
Yeah.
And we won. And when I was picking up the drinks for everybody at 17 years old, the club owner was like, hey, I know that wasn't your joke. He's like, but you got a presence up there and you should consider doing this. And a week later, I was diving right into it.
Nice. Do you know what the joke was, or can you?
Oh, I remember the joke. Yeah, I do. I still remember it to this day.
I'm on pins and needles.
I was hoping I could skate by and you wouldn't
Okay,
grill
fine.
me anymore.
No, you can't skate by.
Or
Take them skates
if
off.
we want to do it at Bastards, you can
This
do it
is
then.
not the joke that I want to introduce people to, but yeah, let's do it. Fuck, here it goes. There were 3 mice sitting at a bar, and they're all just getting like hammered. Oh, can I swear on here? I don't want to.
Fuck yes.
Okay,
It's
I
for
didn't
charity.
wanna offend
God damn
anyone's
it.
Delicate sensibilities. No, and they're getting hammered, and they're telling these war stories about how tough they are. And the first mouse was like, "You know how tough I am?" He goes, "I like to set off the trap, and before the bar hits the other side, I jump underneath it, and I do like push-ups with it." And they're like, "Oh wow, that's pretty tough." And they're slamming shots. And the second mouse goes, he goes, "Well, I'm so tough. I take rat poison and I put it in my protein shake every morning and down it."
Wow.
And the third mouse is just sitting there taking shots, not responding to everything. And they go, "What about you, man? How tough are you?" And he looks at him and he goes, "This is bullshit. I'm gonna go home and fuck the cat." It's not a funny joke.
I've been cooped up for a long time. That's funny to me. So thank you.
Yeah, so that was my introduction. Like a week later, I started, and I was one of those comics that my first time that I performed, all my friends and everyone came, and I crushed it. Like no one has that story of just completely crushing it. And then the second week, nobody showed up. I decided to do a brand new set, and I got to experience a level of silence that I have never encountered before.
Without the fool's gold of your family and friends, it's a much harsher reality.
Oh yeah, it was a learning experience. But even bombing, I was still like, I got to keep doing this.
Yeah. Where were you? Like, where did you grow up?
I was in Reno, Nevada.
Okay.
So yeah, every Thursday there was a huge open mic because we didn't even have any really big comedy clubs in Reno at the time. And it was just like a college bar, and tons of people would show up. It was like standing room only. It was a big event. The comics were guys that would just rip off Dane Cook jokes and not tell anybody.
Oh wow!
It was,
and you paid for this, or they paid for this?
It was pretty terrible, but it was one of the best times I've ever had in comedy. I liked doing that way more than when I was doing stand-up out of New York and LA. So
How is that? I mean, that's what everybody wants to know. When you go to the big time, the major leagues of comedy, you're talking New York and LA.
Yeah.
That's it. And that's big fish, big pond. It's easy to get lost out there.
Pretty much. I mean, unless you're really big, you're still doing comedy for free, really. I got lucky out of New York City. I'm a flight attendant as well, and I got based there. And I met a really nice girl. We ended up dating. She was a very big comic out in New York. And so I pretty much got to skip the lines and just get on shows that I should have not been on. I mean,
I bet that really endeared you to the grizzled New York comics.
It was awkward because all these I remember I did a show with Michael Che in Queens. All right.
Wow.
This was 6 years ago. And I get off stage, and the only word that Michael Che has ever said to me, the only phrase, is he pats me on the shoulder and he said, "Hey, good job. You should try telling jokes next time now."
Oh.
And I was like, all right. So I got kind of to skip all those lines. I never had to bark. I never had to hand out flyers. I got to do shows that were pretty decent shows, everything but the Comedy Cellar. And it was just luck. It was just dumb. You know how this business works. It was just dumb luck. So I literally screwed my way into comedy. Like,
congratulations.
So, yeah, but New York City and LA comedy is completely different. New York, you have the ability to hit up, you can hit up 6 shows in a night because everything's within a 2-mile radius. And when I came to LA to do comedy, it's taken me an hour and a half in traffic just to get to the Ice House or to get to Flappers was where.
Yeah.
Because they take anybody. And I didn't like LA comedy as much because you couldn't stack it on top of each other the way you can in New York. The practice sessions that you get out there, even as a completely shit comic, it's like an exercise. It really kind of helps you. Plus, New York audiences are completely unforgiving. And yeah, they won't be polite to you. So if you sucked, if you're good.
Did you find LA audiences to be polite?
I did, actually. But you got to realize, when I started in LA, I was doing a lot of open mics. So it was 30 comics in a lottery waiting to all go up. Nobody's paying attention to you. So if you got one laugh at one of those, you knew that it was going to be a good joke for like a paying audience.
Yeah. I mean, I cut my teeth in LA. Like the first time I ever did it was in New York, but where I started, for a decade or so was in LA. And every so often I'd go to New York and it was like playtime. Like I loved going to New York for the reasons you said. And again, I wasn't living there, so my experience was different, but I found the people, like the comics, like really welcoming and actually like a lot more friendly than I ever would have expected. I mean, there's going to be some wise asses and stuff, but I'd like to get your thoughts on that, because you probably spent more time in both than I did.
With the New York comedy scene, I don't know. It's just because of the fact that when you're in New York, the conversations you have, everyone is, we're usually all out of shape people who can't get into acting, and we have horrible substance abuse problems. So we only want, when you're in New York, the majority of the people that you meet there, they only want to do comedy, writing or comedy. And then in LA, I'm doing shows and they're like, yeah, so what commercial auditions do you have lined up? What voiceover work are you going to do? And I'm just sitting there going, no. I want to tell dick jokes and make my father proud. I keep mentioning this father thing. I'm joking.
There's no link, I'm sure. Yeah. Have you met your dad, Steve?
This is getting intense now. I think we've learned something about Steve Ryan.
Well, you look like you could be a soap opera star. Did you ever try the acting thing or Gay for Pay or both? Like,
I did the acting thing a lot as a kid and I wanted to do it, but I get more of a kick out of stand-up because, it's that addiction part of my brain where I want instant gratification, to shoot something and then wait months for it to come out and then it could suck. And I don't have that kind of long-term patience. So I need that instant. Is this funny or not? Give me applause and don't talk. And that's it. So how do you like LA though? I mean, have you pretty much only done LA comedy?
No, I mean, I'm in Orange County now, which is actually vastly different from LA. But I the first time I ever did it, Steve, was in New York. That was just kind of on a whim. But I worked in LA for about, 12 to 15 years, then the Bay Area, then San Diego, then here. And so it's a terrible place to start. And maybe it's a worse place to stay. That being said, like a lot of the people I cut my teeth with have gone on to do like really great things. I do a lot of shows with Christina Pazitsky and Tom Segura and Bert Kreischer. I mean, now they're like, Bert was always like kind of big, even when he was new to LA. Yeah, I know it's name dropping, but it's kind of true. Like
a little bit. That's awesome name dropping.
But for instance, like I remember doing like shitty shows with this really friendly, nice comic named Rob Delaney, and I didn't know anything about Twitter, even like late. And then I joined it, and I was like, I remember chatting with him directly, thinking like, oh, so you're gonna do this show? And then a year later, I didn't do Twitter a lot. So do Twitter. That shows how savvy I am, Steve. And then now he's this like huge Twitter celebrity, and now does like others, and there are other folks like Eliza Schlesinger. So like on the one hand, it's the worst place ever to do it, but there are these success stories, and luckily I moved out of there before I had a chance to become really successful myself. So that I timed it perfectly.
No, it's that's the hard part about the stand-up thing, is when you see friends of yours that are just progressing like crazy. I mean,
I'm so happy for them.
Oh yeah. Yeah, and you're just like,
well, one thing specifically, Tom Segura, and he's not paying me to say this. Like, I ran a show for a while, and God, his batting average, in terms of like, he'll come up with 10 new jokes or whatever. Probably 8 were like really, really good. And so that was something like, he maybe needed to work on timing and delivery. But I mean, he just had this knack that even when, it's kind of underground before he really broke through, that was really fun to see.
Tom Segura is incredible. It's, with me, it was just about the practicing part, because you see all these guys who, especially in New York, they hustle their ass off. They're working a job from like 6 a.m. to 3 p.m. Then they're hitting up, 5 to 6 actual shows. You know, they're not doing mics, they're doing decent shows, and they'll go to bed. They're not there to drink. They're not there to socialize. They do their time and then they leave. And that was a big thing that I had to learn, because I thought being a comedian was a social thing. Like Reno, we'd have one big show a week. And so every comic would meet up and it was just party. And maybe we would tell jokes. Like that was kind of it. So it took a long time to get out of that socializing thing. And when you're in New York, you see how hard people put in effort. And so it's very like inspiring and it makes you motivated. But
that's a good point. Like, so for the millions of listeners now, so we probably have some aspiring comedians in the audience. Steve, what do you think are the most important ingredients to progressing as a comedian?
I was a busboy at this restaurant and inside of a casino, and we had an improv down there. And so every single time a stand-up comedian would perform, they'd come to our restaurant because that's where the comped dinner was. And I would sit there and I'd be like, what do you do? What's the key to comedy? What's the key to comedy? And every single one of them said the same thing. They were like, first off, you know, why are you talking to me? Like, and then second, like, I remember I was sitting there asking Doug Benson, what's the key to comedy? And he was so high that he's like, yeah, can I get some more breadsticks? Like,
stop talking to me.
So high. Yeah. So every single one of them, though, was saying, you know, practice. That's all it is. Just get up as much as you can. And I never took that to heart because I was like, no, there's got to be ways to write. Like if I write 2 hours a day, if I change up my words, if I have it specifically scripted, if I've got all this stuff, I can beat around. I can contact bookers. A lot of comedians want to figure out how to get ahead in it without mastering the actual part of stand-up. I mean, don't get me wrong. I am one of those comedians. So that was just the big thing that always kind of hit me. It's you learn how to handle yourself and what will work and where it'll work by just getting up constantly. And I always notice that when I have moments of lapse where I'm not performing, that it puts me off my game at least.
Like if there's a pandemic or something.
Yeah, like a pandemic. I haven't done a show in a comedy club since February.
Yeah.
Wow.
I've done shows on Zoom. I've done, I did a couple shows in rehab. That was kind of fun. They were very forgiving. So
that whole thing about reps, right? Everybody says, you know, that like I'm a big believer in hard work and outworking your own problems. And how do you learn the pace of that work? I mean, you get into that comedic river, you know, if you're doing one show a month, that's cute, you know, but you're not even like in any way relevant. So how do you determine that and build that muscle up? Again, you don't get to be big and fit and strong, whether it's comedy or standing in front of a mirror, you know, if you're not working out enough. But how do you even learn that part of it?
So no, there's this new thing now where you'll see, and Matt, you can probably attest to this. You'll see people who do the once a week or once a month stand-up show, and it's probably them doing 5 minutes or something. And then their Instagram and their Facebook and their Twitter is flooded with self-promotion. And it's this whole thing where you don't have to be good anymore, but if you have a big enough following through social media, that's all you need. And it's really weird to see. And you get a little upset with it. But then there's guys who they won't even post about show. They won't do anything. Their social media is completely dry. And they're the ones who are crushing it. So like you said, it shows what the work you put into gets you. They're not looking to impress their thousands of followers. They're looking to impress bookers. They're looking to impress other comics. Like that's the biggest benefit in comedy is when maybe not audiences notice you, but when other comedians notice you, that's how you start getting on shows because they want that. I don't have that, but it's kind of fun to get lucky now and then.
to fantasize. Well, that kind of reminds me of something I've thought of or experienced is like there are probably more NBA All-Stars than there are people who only do stand-up that can make a successful living. I mean, there are, even someone like Jim Gaffigan, he's great stand-up. He's also a movie star. So when you think of like the pure stand-ups, maybe Brian Regan, I'm just thinking off the top of my head. So yeah, Doug Benson maybe, but I mean, he still has a podcast. So how do you keep it fun? Like, or I guess why do you? Because it's a long haul. Like, what keeps you motivated? Understanding the odds are so stacked against you.
Can I be honest? I know the reason.
Please don't. Just lie. Lie.
I'm gonna lie. No, the reason that I can answer 100%, I know this question. The reason that I still have fun doing stand-up comedy is because I'm not making a living off it yet. Mm-hmm. The minute it becomes work, I've seen people who they hate it. And some people love it, depending on how big they are. But the road comics that I meet, you've seen them, they're just miserable because it's like any other kind of aspect. It becomes work after a while. Mm-hmm. I thought traveling was the best thing that I could ever do in my life. Like, I believed every white woman on Instagram that travel was what makes you happy. And that's how it got. And then when I became a flight attendant, like a year later, I was like, this is awful. I never want to see another airplane again. Everything gets desensitized after a while, no matter how much you love it, unless my guess is you're really successful, and we'll see how well that goes.
Yeah, well, even that, and in my research and writing, Greg Giraldo, A Comedian Story, available on Amazon. I got to thank you.
Exactly.
I got to interview lots of the A-listers, and they said similar things to you, Steve. Like, many just were pissed off. Like, because if you're doing a stadium, you notice your friend is doing 3 stadiums in that month. So
of course,
it's like this dissatisfaction is the norm.
Stand-up comedy is all about compare and despair. That's literally all we do. And we're really fucking good at it. Yeah, no matter what you're doing. I remember I got lucky. I got drunk at some club in Queens one day, and John Fugelsang was there, and we're just outside talking. He goes, "Hey man, come on my show on Sirius." And I was like, "Awesome!" And I remember thinking that was going to be my big break, and all my Reno comedian friends were like, "Dude, we know this is going to be huge." It was an hour and a half long show. I got in one sentence, and then I think I burped a little bit, and that was my claim to fame.
Sure.
It was awful. And I think the one sentence, I don't remember what we were talking about. I chimed in because they were talking about something, and I went, "I was a virgin till I was 18. And he goes, "Okay, cool, moving on." I don't know why I said that sentence. I don't remember the context, but that was my big Sirius XM debut. And yeah.
Well, I think just like anything else, you've got to be on 100 shows, because some shows are going to be complete whiffs, like that one. I mean, that's a shitty show. First off, they're not serving the guest at all. I mean, that's just the God's honest truth. I'll out podcast that person any day of the week.
And you know why? Because I've said more than one sentence while being on here. In fact,
and look at me. I said hardly anything. So, but that is part of that secret. It's like, okay, you have to figure out how to do this, right? To become a comedian. Here I am telling the comedians how to become comedians.
No,
you're going to need a side gig of some kind, or you've got to have a reliable car and tour your ass off over multiple states and build up followings in theaters. So someone like, I don't know, whoever, Gaffigan, he's got a side gig. It's just a really fucking high level one. So you've got to bump your side gig up all the time too,
Oh, no.
I mean, anybody can get into voiceover work. It doesn't mean you get gigs unless you get up to this pace of what it takes to do that professionally. And so next thing you know, I mean, how many comedians do you know that don't even really do comedy anymore because they do voiceover work all the time? And like
social media stuff.
Guy DiMaggio, he does all those great voices. He's not going to go out and tour heavily anymore. I can't remember his first name right now, but he's hilarious. He should be doing that stuff, but his side gig became so lucrative. He's like, I'll just do that other thing for fun.
Well, even I have friends that are really big with comedy, and they're still just struggling because you can't make money anymore unless you're really doing social media stuff. You get club shows, but then the hotel may not be included, or you're spending, or you're renting a car. It's really hard. Even guys that are very successful, are kind of barely scraping by, and it takes a long time to kind of get to that level. You have to figure, like you said, you have to figure out side gigs. And I had a point to this when I was going, and I was going to give an example, and now it's just fucking gone.
Well, let me add on to this whole thing. So what is successful? Is it a great paying side gig? I mean, we've had a bunch of comedians on the show, and they've done everything from being radio hosts to, Jay Moore.
Flight attendants.
Yeah.
No, Jay Moore is amazing. He's one of my favorites, man. That guy still puts out specials, and he's cranking it out. As far as I really had a good point, and it's just gone. It's so gone. When it comes to those levels that you can hit, I have a buddy of mine who he did the Tonight Show, and that used to be the pillar. That was, if you did the Tonight Show and you killed, you were going to have a career. You were going to get a sitcom deal. You were going to get holding options. I mean, everything was going to open up. And he did Craig Ferguson. And then 7 months later, he wrote me and he went, "Hey, how much do you make as a flight attendant? I'm thinking of applying." And this guy he's really good. He's really good. It wasn't a testament to his, comedic skills. It just shows that things are way different now. If you're not doing money through YouTube pretty much, then it's hard to kind of make the living, because people make more off YouTube lately than they will at the comedy club.
Right. And like anything, like there's going to be a few people that can do that. And then as YouTube changes the rules to get more money out of their machine, the in-betweeners, they get less and less money. It's like, oh, you have to have 20,000 followers now. You're like, God damn, I got to do so, how am I ever going to get to that point? You can make a real living with a smaller number if you do something else. I mean, legitimately, even if it's not comedy.
Oh, yeah. And the worst part about it is when I'm doing a show and I'll be like featuring for somebody. Oh, which, by the way, I love how in the little bio that you put up, you put headlining comedian Steve Ryan. That was the best joke I've ever heard. I'm like, headliner. You should have called it check guest spot Steve Ryan is going to be joining us. He did a really good 5 minutes. Shoot, I just forgot my point again.
You are the pointless for getting this guy out.
You're headlining this show, Steve. So, your resume got a little brighter.
Yeah. You're bumped up.
I'll be featuring for a place or for a guy, and it'll be a headliner, and it won't be a guy with, Comedy Central or was on Sirius or was on a Tonight Show or anything. It'll be YouTube star. And then that's it. And I used to think that was the biggest joke in the world. I remember just scoffing, and Vine star was also my favorite. Back when Vine was the thing. And I remember going, oh my God, this is not comedy. And now I would give anything to open up for some dude doing YouTube like Trevor Wallace or something, because that's how people gauge, your height of celebrity now, which is just, it's so weird than when I guess me and Matt started.
That's a good point. How has comedy, for better or worse, changed in your opinion, Steve, over the last, call it 10 years?
I mean, there's the obvious. I think comedians like to talk ad nauseum about the tone of comedy that you can do now. So I know as far as social media, comedy's changed in that aspect. And especially with COVID, the way that clubs aren't even open right now, whether or not you want to do a Zoom show, if you want to practice, you have to do them. Well, at least at my level. And I'm not sure what'll happen with the clubs, I mean, I think people have this idea that comedy clubs make a shitload of money and that they'll still be around once this whole little pandemic thing's over. And it's just, I don't know if that's true. The Comedy Store always barely scrapes by. Mm-hmm. I don't even know how they're staying open right now. And as far as the actual comedy itself, it's a delicate balancing act with jokes lately, and comedians love talking about it. It's straight white male comedians love talking about how comedy's under attack. So
hasn't comedy always been under attack? I mean, there's always someone that's looking to be pissed off about something.
Yeah, I mean, looking as far back as like Lenny Bruce and Richard Pryor, George Carlin. To think that this is some new ideal it's ridiculous. What I see is that comics like Tom Segura, and there's these amazing comics who are very offensive, and the way that they portray it is incredibly smart and very well articulated, and people are, they've got it nailed down. And then you'll get the open micer who works at Jiffy Lube during the day, and he'll just get up on stage and barrel against something PC, and it's not coming off as intelligent. It comes off, it makes it look worse, actually.
Yeah.
So I'm that comic who I'm too scared to say anything really offensive or bad because I want people to like me. I don't want to lose half my audience by coming out and doing a Trump or an Obama joke type thing. I want them all to love me because there's a huge hole right here. So,
well, isn't the key to success you want to please everyone all the time?
Of course.
That's how it works.
Yeah. That's, and I learned tons about that. There's this whole self-worth issue thing in comedy where people are like, you are so confident on stage and it's great. And then afterwards, I won't look anyone in the eye and I'm averting my gaze and I'm sitting there going, what am I doing with my fucking life? So
there's a funny double standard, right? So when you come up in school, like if you're like me, I'm plenty smart, but I'm terrible at math. I'm just terrible at it, right? And so if you're really bad at standing up in front of a crowd and doing a speech or whatever, the teacher and the class go to extraordinary measures just to get you up there, which would be a D or an F in math. If you just try, just give it, and if you fail, you're gonna get a B because you tried, right? It don't work that way in math, but somehow that works in public performance. We're just getting up there. Come on, just that one time, it's so different. And I wonder if we don't value just how hard it is to do what you're talking about. I mean, because obviously you know how to do it. Obviously you know how to write jokes, but it is such a hard thing and it's so nuanced. I've learned so much about comedy from talking to all you guys. It's incredible how complicated this is to walk this political tightrope and, not just be funny, but to have the courage to say, my airline job that keeps me safe and fed and provided for is holding me back. Fuck this thing. I'm jumping off the cliff and I'm going for it.
Absolutely.
They don't have that math.
Oh, no. With the math that, like you were saying, it relates to comedy because I think Matt can attest to this. There's a formula that you figure out in stand-up after a while. You realize how your jokes are. You reword them. It's like a verbal Tetris. You'll have one joke and you'll be like, you know what? This word in the middle, it's good, but I need a better word. I need something more obscure. I need something specific. I don't think people realize how much most comedians go over every sentence they're saying and they flip the words and they're trying to put it together like a puzzle. And that's what happens when you see someone will go to a show and they'll retell the stand-up comedian's joke to their friend at the office and the friend won't laugh. And then the person will be like, oh, well, you had to hear how the comedian said it. I'm telling it wrong. Mm-hmm. That's what comedy was to me is I know what I want to say. I know how I want to word it. Everything has to be perfect. And I had to learn how to improv and kind of go off that the more that I got because I was very scripted. So that's a big thing.
I want to change gears a little bit because you've been very candid and obviously looking great. You mentioned some rehab shows. So, how did you get involved in the rehab community and what can you, what guidance can you give to the folks out there?
I had, like most comedians, I can't speak in absolutes. I had a huge substance problem. I like to drink a lot. I liked a lot of cocaine. It was the way that I could do shows continuously. The one thing was, even in stand-up, I wasn't a big drinker because I wanted things to go smooth. And I knew if I drank too much, that it would just be a jumbled mess. So for me, I reached out to the funny thing is that in stand-up, I wasn't really that much of an addict. It was more in being a flight attendant and being a normal person. So I reached out to a comedian who's been sober that I knew from New York and around November. And she kept telling me, yo, you've got to go to rehab. And there's no way I'm going to rehab. And around February, she said, hey, your job as a flight attendant, you have amazing benefits toward this bougie, great rehab facility in Laurel Canyon in LA. And she went, you're not going to have to pay a dime. It's incredible. And you need to go. And so I just decided to. I walked into the place, and sure enough, I mean, it was just like if white privilege were a community, it was just crazy. Very, 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 very nice. And that beat the little shitty apartment that I was living in New York and staying with my parents sometimes in Reno. So I was like, yeah, I'll do this. And I made it 90 days there. And I ran away on the 90th day, right in the middle of a grid. I left all my stuff there. I booked it, came home. Then I've been to rehab 3 times since February. So I'm not doing this whole sober thing very well. So if you're looking for me to inspire people looking to put down the bottle, you may want to book someone else.
Well, I'm glad you. I mean, we're joking, but it takes a lot of strength to understand. Like you're going against something fucking hard. It's really difficult, and relapse is the norm. Very few people go to rehab once and then like smooth sailing the rest of their lives.
I know, and that's the worst stories to hear too. You'll hear all these guys who are like, "Oh, I went to rehab for 30 days and I've been sober for 30 years," and it's almost like the comedian thing where you're just sitting there going, you're like, how did you? I went back.
But let me jump in here and say something about that, because we suck at dealing with addiction. We haven't figured this out yet, right? I mean, it's a disease. We all understand that. And if you don't understand that, you're behind. Understand it's a disease.
I didn't think that before I went into rehab. So I agree now.
And it manifests in your friends and family. You treat them like shit. You put your burden on them and you're an asshole to them because the addiction has you so sick. You don't, like, well, why don't they just do this? No one chooses a drug over their family.
Yeah.
Because that's the outcome they want. That's not reality. And the other thing I want to say is that when people do go in and come out 30 days later and they're sober for 30 years, that's not a reliable outcome. I mean, one of our viable things that we say at the professional level is, you need to hit rock bottom first. Like your cancer, let's get you to stage 5.5. And then we're going to bring you back.
We're going to bring you back.
We're to a death door. Yeah.
It's bullshit. So when you see that person, they're just incredibly fortunate. I mean, it's just not a reliable path. So whatever you're fighting on and however you do it, God bless. Hopefully you can find a better solution than just keep trying, white knuckle it. Why don't you white knuckle your polio?
My knuckles are so white they started an Etsy account. Like that's how fucking white knuckling I am doing. No, I did my 3rd attempt. I went for another 90 days, and now I'm kind of back. I relapsed the minute I got out, and I think I'm literally at a week right now. But I'm still. It's something that I know that I have to do. I can't have that fun drink with friends at a barbecue. I can't have that drink after a show. It's just, I'm not wired that way. I am all or nothing. Who would have thought? And so that's a big, when I ran from rehab the first time, I ran away. Like we were sitting in a group and I grabbed my bag and I booked it. I came up with I had a story because they had my phone, my wallet, my passport and everything in a safe. And I had to come up with a story on how to get that out. And I did, and they handed it to me, and I just took off. And that was 10 times more exciting than when I decided to relapse afterwards. And I ran down the street, and I'm calling like an Uber as I do it. And the guy comes, picks me up, because for some reason I thought they were going to chase me. I was kind of hoping. Like I had just escaped, from Rikers Island or something. And I jump in this Uber. And I'm like, just go, 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 go. And the guy looks and he goes, you didn't just run from prison, did you? And I'm like, no. I'm like, I ran from technically. I was like, we're going to a liquor store. I just ran from rehab. And he's like, oh, that's awesome. And he was like my getaway driver. And it was just embarrassing. It's weird how that addict mind won't.
Yeah.
I could have checked out. Done a normal procedure. I wasn't trapped there. I checked myself in. Yet in my mind, I thought I was in this prison, and it just goes to show how that acts. So
it turns out they're on your side. They're like, if you want to run away from here, then we'll see you when you come back.
And that's exactly what they did.
Better for business the longer you're here. So.
And here's the worst part. Not only did I relapse, but the first thing I drank when I relapsed, because I was in California, you have to go to like a liquor store to get liquor. I relapsed on something that this little bodega type place all they had was like White Claw. So my first drink was a White Claw. And that was more embarrassing than the relapse itself. It was a huge step back.
Hey, this is Pete A. Turner from Lions Rock Productions. We create podcasts around here. And if you, your brand, or your company want to figure out how to do a podcast, just talk to me. I'll give you the advice on the right gear, the best plan, and show you how to take a podcast that makes sense for you, that's sustainable, that's scalable, and fun. Hit me up at pete@breakitdownshow.com. Let me help. I want to hear about it.
So my first drink was a White Claw. And that was more embarrassing than the relapse itself. It was a huge step back.
Well, you've been super candid about it on social media, and that's why I wasn't as reluctant to bring it up.
Yeah.
But first off, I think that's badass because one, it'll fulfill your desire for attention. If you talk about rehab, you're gonna get likes.
Of course.
That's for sure. But I think and more seriously, when you put it out publicly, you're taking a step saying like, I want to fix this. I want to get better. And I think it's really easy to keep it closeted. And you didn't do that. I mean, you're closeted clear other things, but this one, no, but I know I'm proud of you. That's my long-winded way of saying I'm proud of you, Steve. Good job.
I appreciate that. Yeah. It's I have very conservative parents who don't understand. They're very like 1950s nuclear type. And they don't understand having something bad happen to you and then immediately telling strangers. Like, yeah. I mean, I know people think that people do it on social media all the time, but as comedians, that's what we were doing before that even existed. You'd be in the worst situation of your life. And I remember thinking, all right, how can I turn this in to a tight 10? So that to me, the rehab thing wasn't, I saw it more as an accountability factor. Okay. Because I knew that when I was hanging out with my friends after rehab, if they were drinking and they saw me pick up any kind of drink, I wanted them to instantly have judgment if I decided to do that. I wanted them to know that I can't do that anymore. I don't have that that ability to stop. And so the fact that it holds me accountable by talking about it most of the time is that's a big thing to me. Like I want people to know that I don't have that ability.
Okay. And Pete, I'd like to get your thoughts. Obviously, in every community, but specifically, you do a lot of work with vets.
Yeah.
And there are different ways of dealing with addiction. What are some of the, I guess, success stories, or what have you learned from your work in that?
That saying things like tell my friends that I shouldn't drink is bullshit addict behavior, and not to be critical, but it just got to go right back to it. It's not my job to make you not drink when you have a drink in your hand. What am I going to do? Wrestle you? I'm like, I empathize with you. I don't want you to drink. I'm going to go as far as I won't even drink. I'll say, let's not go to a bar, but it's not my job to make you not relapse. No, I care about you, but that's, and this is not a knock on Steve in any way at all, but like, this is part of that addict mind. Like, they think I can help them. I can't make them not drink, because 10 minutes after I leave them, even if I've wrestled them to the ground and slapped the liquor out of their mouth, he's going to go fucking drink White Claws, because there ain't no laws. It's just like, I got to have White Claws and Trulies.
Oh no.
I'm gonna get some soda water and some bourbon and put them together so I can fake like I'm not drinking White Claws.
Exactly.
But I mean, this is the thing. Look, with suicide and everything else too. Like the time to help someone, it's not to save them at that point of crisis. Like if you're suicidal and you're a veteran and they're into the rope, like we got to help them way before that. We got to get someone like Steve, like, let's go do something that has nothing to do with alcohol at all. Just go have a good time, and then let that be the goal. We just went out, we had a good time, and try not to make it like this is the time when I'm going to save you, because there is no reliable trigger that just flips it and you're like, hey, I'm healthy, I'm perfect. Like there's a wound. It's just like having a big slice on your chest with no stitches in it, and we're pouring, I don't know, iodine or salt on it. Yes, like your shoulder thing. If addiction was like that, where like you had to wear a sling, maybe then we could be like, oh yeah, let's just go kick it and let's go to the beach and hang out and just watch the waves. That would be great. But we always want to make like, I can heal you, I can recover you, and we can't.
what you were talking about earlier, I want to touch on because that's exactly related to stand up, the addiction portion and the suicidal portion. When I was 17, I worked with an amazing comic. He was brilliant and very happy guy. And we all went out one night and we drank and we had a good time. And 2 hours later, he went home and he stuck a shotgun in his mouth and he killed himself. And I remember thinking, this is so abnormal. And then 6 months later, another comedian I knew killed himself. And then 3 months later, and that's been that way for 10 years that I've kind of been doing this. The addiction aspect of it and the suicidal aspect is very prominent. Mm-hmm. And the worst part is that our idols are these guys who they have lost their lives to it. Greg Giraldo is one of my big favorites. And I thought that if I went on that path that he took, of addiction and then recovery and, trying to mend it, that I would forgive myself for that. I'd be like, well, Greg Giraldo had slips. Like he tried it. It's very hard when your heroes have these huge issues. And when you have to separate the fact that they're not hero, there's fallacies. And it's very difficult.
I think in like music too, I mean, there's a tendency to glorify addiction or drug, sex, drugs, and rock and roll. And you think it's kind of part of the fun. You're at a party, so you're going to drink. And then the more you see the reality of it, it's one of the most depressing things that anyone can experience. And, someone like Dane Cook, it was really popular to shit on him for, and I don't even want to talk about his comedy. Like he obviously got really big. And when you're that big, you're going to get backlash. It's just inevitable. But he made a conscious choice to he just didn't drink at all. And I don't know him personally. Like maybe he has, reasons that he can't, but there's also, I don't think it's realistic. And I don't even know if it's the goal, but to sort of applaud that sort of lifestyle too. It's not sexy, but it would be nice to have more public examples of people like that.
There are, unfortunately, the only comedian that we also kind of have right now is Chris D'Elia. That guy's never drank either, but he's kind of
bad example.
So I don't know if I want to really back that up. I was always under the impression that the guys who did not drink at all in comedy were the least funny. And the minute I got sober and saw how well put together these guys were, not only were they funny, but they were the ones who were making it lucratively. They were the ones who were able to afford stuff. It turned it completely different. And they're, Brian Regan's, no, not Brian Regan. Oh crap! I already forgot. This is what the.
Well, he's a good. I don't know if he drinks or doesn't, but he's a good example of someone who. He's been able to hold it together for 40 years as a professional, or however long he's doing it, and he's doing something right. And it's not just his jokes are great, but beyond that, he is he seems fairly well adjusted.
And for me, I just didn't realize that there's really a lot of sober comedians out there who either they've been sober their whole lives or they got sober. Look at, John Mulaney. The guy got sober when he was 23, and I think he's one of the best out there right now. So
Jim Norton is an example. I think it's hilarious.
Oh, yeah.
He also got sober, 18 years old. So, he was a big addict in high school, apparently. And maybe it's easier to get, I don't know for a fact, but he's been able to hold it together for decades. And, God bless him.
He's got a little bit of a hooker problem, but hey,
no one's perfect. No one's perfect.
So, yeah, I really appreciated the fact that it showed me that there was other avenues, and moments of being happy that I didn't have to do with drinking or whatsoever. I still get more of a rush on stage sober than I do with anything.
Have you tried replacing your addiction for something that's healthier? I remember when Chris Mullen played for the Warriors and was just, a huge alcoholic. And he's like, I'm just going to ride stationary bikes and jump rope and I'm always going to work out. So he became incredibly fit and got incredibly focused and turned his addiction into things that helped his career.
Oh no, it's incredibly helpful. I kind of went the same route where I was like, oh, because I was drinking like 20 or 30 drinks a day. So when I would drink, I was a lot bigger, and I traded it for working out. And my only problem was I mistook physical appearance and fitness for recovery. Like I thought if I got a six pack, that meant I was cured of alcoholism. Like, look how good I look. And that is not the case. I still haven't really found, something different, something to take my mind off. I do a lot of meditation. I'll do a lot of kind of like Buddhist work, meetings, working out. It's like a balance of everything. For me, writing was a big help as well. So, but I understand. Yeah. Most of the time people will switch addictions, and it's always funny to see what you go after.
Well, maybe a sex addiction's in your future, especially looking as good as you are. I mean,
I didn't mention that I was being treated for that as well.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. There was a guy that was at my rehab for sex addiction, and he had this little piece of paper that was a test, and it would tell you if you were a sex addict, and he was only there for sex addiction. Oh. And I went, let me fill this thing out. I want to try. And I did. And I hand it back to him, and he goes, you scored 3 times higher than I did.
Do you want to suck my dick?
Why not?
So that was, and that's harder than the alcoholism for me. Especially when you're, doing shows or you're doing it. That's the bigger challenge. So.
Okay, so no sex, no booze. You'll be a hell. Your abs are gonna look great, Steve.
No way, no fun. It's it's just a balance of everything. But I miss the fact that we don't have clubs. Like, how are clubs? Are they opening at all in LA, or are they completely shut down?
They're pretty shut down. I mean, there are rumors here or there that they'll do like drive-in show or parking lot shows, but in terms of indoor, in person, it's a ghost town.
Yeah, it's kind of the same everywhere else, especially now that it's getting worse. And that's just the haunting part, because it's like what you were asking earlier. What do you think the future of this is going to be? And it's just hard to know, but we'll always figure stuff out.
Yeah, I guess we're kind of coming into the end, but what are some goals? Like, how would either for yourself and the industry in general, like, we're not going to be in a pandemic forever. How do you want to see comedy on the other side?
I get more of a joy writing jokes, like whether it be, sending jokes to, like, I would like more of a writing aspect I like doing stand-up. I like performing. I'll always do that, but I feel that I excel a lot more with writing jokes than I do speaking them. Mm-hmm. And so that's something that I'm always interested in. And it's hard to reach out. You can submit stuff, you can send out packets, or you can submit jokes to late night shows or something, but it's very hard to get into that. And once it does get accepted, you make about as much as an artist makes on one play of like a Spotify song. Mm-hmm. So it's very hard to do. Like, I'm just getting above that level in comedy where I'm making a little bit more than what they used to pay me, which was mainly like mozzarella sticks and PBR. That was my currency. Was if I got fed, I was happy.
You're set.
Yeah. So that's really kind of the only goals that I have with it. Everyone would love to be big and everything, but I think I have so many demons in my past that if I got famous, it would just fuck me to death. So I want to go under the radar, yet be able to have a mortgage.
Yeah. I like that.
No superstardom.
It's a good goal to be able to just kind of have a foundation where you can handle whatever comes at you. And really, when I talk to all these incredibly successful people, like we just had a writer on the other day, and they took the most atypical path to writing and executive producing shows. But, he got a PhD in poetry. But by the time he got to the point where it was like, yeah, you can write, we want to see more of your stuff. He knew how to concoct stories and how to make them, lean. And And then he had to learn all the other stuff, you know, like, and I was asking him, you know, he puts together shows we see on TV all the time. And I'm like, what stands out? Like, what skill is out there that you're like, I have no idea how important this was? He's like, the prop guy. The prop guy, I'm going to come up with some corny concept, you know, and it's going to be in a certain decade historically. And then that person's got to go anticipate my desire and give me options, you know? And he used this example of like, I don't know, like a can of sardines or something, but it's got to be, you know, era specific. And then I don't want a square one. I want a round can of sardines, you know? And so it's this whole thing of, there's so much detail in what we all do with whether it's comedy or podcasting. I mean, every time you say something, I'm like, that's like our world. Like, you are probably in the first percentile for comedians. You can make money. You can go out and work rooms in New York City. How many people can say that? You know, it's so rare, but the mountain is so steep above you still, you know?
And that's the one thing that I knew from the beginning, especially with comedy, was that there's a tier level. And I knew that I wasn't going to be an open micer and pretend that I was, you know, doing sellout crowds. And that's actually how, when I was in Reno, we had a Catch a Rising Star, and now they're a Laugh Factory.
Mm-hmm.
But the goal was to perform at that Catch a Rising Star, because that was the big leagues. And every time I talked to a manager, they wouldn't let me do it. And I wrote this article about being a stand-up comedian and having too high of goals for the level of talent that you were at. And it got picked up by this guy named Dave Mancarelli.
Mm-hmm.
And Dave shared it everywhere, and it went nuts. And so Dave wrote me, he was managing Catch a Rising Star at the time. And he said, hey, I want to get you up. This was brilliant, and it was accurate. And you're not some naive open micer who's trying to be more than he is. And he's like, I want you to come and do 5. And I wrote him back and went, give me about 3 weeks because I'm not ready. And he literally wrote back and said, that's exactly what I like. He goes, you're not trying to pretend. And that's what gave me a huge start was what he did for me, because that transferred into Laugh Factory, and that transferred into shows in New York. And, you know, Sean Donnelly helped me out in New York after seeing stuff through Dave McGrath. It's being honest about what comedy was and being, you know, not too grandiose about it was what got me further.
Well said.
Yeah.
This is awesome. I mean, the ability to have these kind of conversations, whether it's addiction or just the fucked up nature in general of what it means to be a comedian. You know, we brought up, I wasn't even going to bring up Chris D'Elia, but here's a guy who's killing it, except for he's not. He's got these flaws. And it's definitely, not only is it a very challenging profession to take on, it's fraught with danger.
Yes.
You know, just so many areas where you can explode your career or end up dead. I mean, legitimately, I know being a crab fisher or crabberman, whatever you call it, crabberman up in Alaska.
Crabberman?
Dangerous.
I think that's the technical term for it.
Right.
Crabberman, yeah.
But
A lobster
it's
guy.
gotta be hyper dangerous to be a comedian of any level of success. It just has to be. And you would never think that, but you're right. Like, if it's anywhere near on par with veterans killing themselves,
Yeah.
you know, either directly or indirectly, there's got to be thousands of comedians every year dying because they're in that profession.
Yeah, there's a huge, you know, no matter how confident, we learn how to be confident on stage, because if you're not, you fail miserably.
Yeah.
But a lot of times what I notice, or at least with myself, that confidence isn't there off stage. And that's why you're kind of performing dick jokes for strangers so that, you know, you can get paid in applause. And once again, fill that hole that my dad never did with, you know, applause and standing ovations. Man, that'll make up for the fact that he said, you're going to be a flight attendant, huh? So it helps. It really helps.
Well, listen, I appreciate you coming on. Hopefully we can get you on stage at at Bastards Canteen out in Temecula. Yeah, that'd be a lot of fun to have you come up, and we'll do soda only night for you. You know,
that sounds amazing. I still pretty much kind of work out of LA. I'm there in LA all the time, so it's not hard for me to get down. And, that's the other thing that's awesome about being a comedian and a flight attendant. I fly for free. Like, no stand-up comedian has that. I got very lucky in that aspect. And I've never taken advantage of it. So, no, I would love to do that. And I really appreciate you guys for letting me be on here, because it's been a long time since I've done something like this. And I love talking about it. Every comedian won't shut up about their self-glorification in the stand-up world. That's all we like to talk about, is talk shop.
I wish I was inclined just to hit the kill button right there. We won't shut up about it and just chop.
As you should. You should have hit it like 45 minutes ago. So,
yeah, remember we tried to stop it right at the first sentence. All right, man. Well, listen, thank you so much, Matt. Again, of course, always thank you for helping me co-produce these and support.
My pleasure.
This is awesome. Thank you so much again, Steve. We're looking forward to seeing everybody on stage again soon.